right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm Carla Weiss. I'm the head of brand and creative at Docusign.
And I'm Laura Tron. I am the SVP of clients at BASIC DEPT, a creative and branding agency. Carla, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you. So we're here to talk to you today about the Docusign rebrand, which happened earlier this year. And when we think of brand, we oftentimes think of colors, logos, fonts. But our story was a little bit deeper than that this year, and we're here to share that with you today. So when we approached brand and we were approaching the rebrand of Docusign, we were looking at it as a bigger, broader spectrum for us to tell a bigger story. And for us, we wanted to build a brand that created that gut feeling that reinforces what you feel about our company in every touch point, whether it's a customer or a prospect. So we really started from the ground up looking at our brand strategy. And so for me, it was really important that we could build a public-facing experience that could really take a visitor through our journey. After all, most of you probably know Docusign. And so we wanted to celebrate this legacy brand by giving the public an immersive experience. And so this is really no small feat, rebranding a company. We go all the way back to 2003, almost 22 years old. And so we have legacy roots. We have a really big and complex business. And I'm sure many of you have probably signed a DocuSign or maybe sent a DocuSign in your life. And that's amazing. You've probably said something like this, where, I use DocuSign to sign my mortgage or a contract for work or things like that. And that's such a privileged place to be as a brand, to have yourself be like a household name that people know and recognize. But for us, we were moving in our journey strategically from just a brand that most people know, again, for that signing moment, to something much bigger. And so with this rebrand, we wanted to widen and deepen the story so that we could tell the world that there is much more to DocuSign, which is actually much bigger than just the signature moment. It's actually, how do I handle my full agreement needs, whether it's creating the document to begin with, drafting it, negotiating on it, eventually storing and managing that agreement. And some businesses have literally hundreds and thousands of these agreements. And of course, signing is still a core part of our business, but now we were telling such a bigger, deeper story that we needed to move beyond just brand awareness to what I call positioning strength. So somebody could say, I use DocuSign to handle my full agreement needs. So this is where we started in 2003. You probably have seen this mark in your life or remember it. It literally says what the product does, right? It's a cursive signature, and it's got this, sort of corporate dusty blue that is reminiscent of that 2003 time. And then in 2017, we actually rebranded, and we took the brand on a different visual language methodology, and we actually used what I lovingly call like old school analog paper-based methods. So remember those like cute little stickers that you would get on a document that's like sign here and it's like a flag? I mean, you still see those, they still exist. That is literally what the brand motif was based on. So we had like this downward facing arrow and it's like sign here. And we had neon yellow, which was indicative of Post-it notes or highlighters. And our illustration style was even based on the cursive within a signature. So you can see that that motif works really, really well for a company that is all about signature. But when we think about broadening the scope of the product and the brand, it was like, okay, this is not going to work anymore to tell a story that DocuSign is so much more. So that's where we also started seeing something really interesting happen. Within, I would say, 2020 to 2021, we started seeing this, like what I call the neon zeitgeist. And this is where everything started becoming neon. And this healthy tick up over and over. We kept seeing like neon, neon. We saw it in tech. We saw it in consumer brands. We saw it with Amazon and Peloton and The Verge. We even saw it with Kohl's. And so we were seeing this over and over. And this is a competitor, sign now, RIP. But now it felt like a trend more than something I was like, okay, we really own this color, and now it just feels trendy. And so when this trend eventually dies, because they all do, it doesn't feel ownable. It feels like we're late on this trend. So that was a big thing for us. And then lastly, and this was a really strategic decision and actually like one of the harder parts of the rebrand to pull off, was we decided to change the company name by lowercasing the s because we kept the company name. 22 years, you don't just throw that away, but we wanted to de-emphasize sign as the core story. So we did that, and oh my gosh, that was such a hard change. You'd think it would be like find and replace. It's not. So we also were privileged to see some really great stories come out of this rebrand, and they would pick up on these changes, which was really impactful. And I think our experience that we built with DEPT was a huge part of that, because they would tell these choices that we were making in these stories. So that was really key for us. So let's get into the brand itself. So that's the history, and we'll take a look at what we did. So I'm really proud to say that all of our new branding was done in-house, which is really remarkable. We talked to a couple big agencies, and we just felt like we weren't really like in the right place to do that. And so I have a really small, amazing team. I think they're watching right now. Hi, folks. A really small, amazing team of 17. And we were like, okay, big challenge, huge deadline looming. Can we do this? And like we just got really rallied around the cause. Okay, so that's the story of how we wanted to bring this brand to life. Sign is still a part of the narrative. So you even see that in that short video, where it's still a core part of the contracting process, but it's not the only part. So our new logo is literally two overlapping shapes, what we call the shape of agreements and the capitalized D, which is about parties coming together. It's about parties coming together in agreement. And so the center mark for us, I mentioned this, is called the shape of agreements. And this became actually a repeating pattern and a motif that we use throughout the brand. So we really wanted to take a logo that could have legs, not just in the logo itself, but then like use it in like cool geometric places, use it as an outline, use it as a fill. So we started really playing with that. And then we handcrafted the word mark itself to build in some custom quirks. So we added in the dog ear shape that you see on the D and the I here, just really subtle. We dropped the descender on the U and made the S and the U kind of hug more and feel a little more friendly together. And then lastly, we added in a little bit of what we call a deeper ink trap within the G and the N. And that just gave it like almost this friendly little smile. And so these were just some of the quirks that we looked at building into the brand to really convey the personality. We also built a custom typeface that we call Docusign Indigo. So we're no longer relying on licensed typefaces. We have our own, which is really, really cool and highly recommend. That's a passion point of mine. And at the heart of our brand strategy that I mentioned before was we built this new brand promise. We were saying, okay, what do we really want to say to the world? What are we communicating that is the guarantee when you work with Docusign? So our brand promise is bringing agreements to life. And that is really the historical legacy of a 22-year-old brand. We've brought agreements to all of you if you've ever signed a Docusign, but we're continuing to do it in a much deeper and richer way into our future. And so we used our word mark as a container, and we started playing with like how can we put footage into it, patterns, shapes, textures, people, B-roll. It was like a really amazing container that we're playing around a lot with. We also built out a really great full illustration system. So again, riffing off of that geometry that was in that core word mark, we started playing with 3D shapes, and we were starting to bring the story of data into the agreement process, and how could we show it being lost? How could we show it being found or extracted? And then we really started playing with like, okay, now how do we bring in some motion and animation, bring it to life on social in a way that feels really alive? And then lastly, we started bringing in what we call our branded problem. So this was the villain of the story, like what's the opposite of what we want for you? And so this is what we call the agreement trap. The agreement trap is where your money, your time, your data goes to die because you're not managing your agreements well. And so we built out a full illustration library that shows like literally money like falling down the drain. And so that's a really powerful part of the brand. So we wrapped all that up in about 4 months, which was a really big effort. And we tied it all up with this beautiful bow in our brand guidelines. But this is where I was like, we can do so much more, right? We didn't want just like a static PDF that was gonna kind of like, okay, here's the new brand, now it's on a shelf. We wanted to do so much more. And so that's where Laura comes in.
Fantastic. I'll grab that clicker. So when Carla came to us, we were so excited about the opportunity to work with her team. We've worked together for a number of years, and this just felt like a great next step for all of us. We also knew that it wasn't going to just be yet another project, because the unique nature of a rebrand, especially a company-based rebrand like this, was something that we really wanted to bring to life in a special way and tell the sort of story of how we were doing that. Docusign asked us to create something immersive. They said they wanted to sort of invest in the identity. And so, at BASIC, we often do this for our clients. We often create the visuals and the brand guidelines. But in this case, as Carla mentioned, her small but mighty team did all of that work in-house already. They composed their own music, their own UI sounds, and the team was figuring out some of that brand language alongside what we wanted to bring to life. I will first say we are also really proud that we were a finalist for Webflow's Brand Transformation of the Year. And yeah, that deserves some claps. The question for us, knowing that the rebrand was being done by Carla's team, was how are we going to bring to life this online immersive experience that's going to transparently sort of reflect the modernization of a legacy brand? And the answer required bringing our full scope of services. We had creative direction, experience design, copywriting, motion, graphic design, video production, and of course, we worked with Webflow for the front end and the development and QA. And, importantly, I think 4 months to come and bring to life a rebrand is a really big deal. For the site, we had about 6 weeks, and that is from briefing, conceptualizing, and then all of the build, including a show reel. We say it here, there were a lot of tears of joy. We'll get to that at some point in the future. There were 2 concepts that we presented to the team. We loved both of them. The first one was called Guided Tour. The second one was Freedom to Explore. Visually, Guided Tour was this premium, bold, cutting-edge aesthetic, and we took this approach to sort of say, hey, DocuSign is going to move from an e-signature agreement tool to the powerful of an intelligent agreement management tool. And this was a techie, sort of polished look, and we really wanted to show how we could flex the AI integrations with their business platforms as well through this. So Guided Tour direction was based on a web layout. It was predetermined for the user as they went through it. No options for them to skip ahead. And then as you get into direction 2, this was Freedom to Explore. And aesthetically, think about a sketch. This was sort of our baseline for thinking about this. It was a blueprint. It was a tireless commitment to the craft. And the visuals really wanted to strike a balance between the past and the future, how we're going between light and dark, between work and life. And it was suggestive of open source as well, which we loved, thinking about the fact that there are all of these tools in the new Docusign. And the navigational bar also allowed you to skip from one area of the site to another. So you could jump straight to logos, for example. You didn't have to go in a very linear fashion. I won't spoil it, but as much as we loved Direction 1, we all felt really, really passionate about Direction 2. It was honest, it was purposeful, and it was kind of imperfect in a good way. And the direction gave us a foundation that we could sort of take people on this journey, and it allowed us to show the rebrand in a way that felt really natural and interactive. We built this incredible working culture from day one. There were a lot of people. This shows some of us being in Figma, but we built candid conversations, and we tried to make sure that we were breaking down the silos between the traditional agency-client way of working. So rather than waiting for reviews, we just hopped on the phone, had a 5-minute conversation, and tried to hash things out. And the sort of culture of collaboration, I think, acting as this one team made it a really special moment that enabled us to take risks, to test, to iterate, and all of that happened alongside the support of the team and with working with Webflow. This is something I love from Slack. This is our team. It was care. There was a lot of love. There was a levity. Jake is one of our group creative directors. He did finally sleep. The benefits that we found coming together in this way and the benefits of working with Webflow, we felt like it was sort of seemingly endless. Easy to use, simplicity in the build, components we could utilize sort of and put in and flex and scale. We also found there were a lot of partners that we could tap into for guidance, and all of these things made our project hyper successful in a really short period of time. If if you see these, you can see it's beautiful the way it comes to life. And Webflow had the ability for us to easily adjust modules. There's a community we tapped into, and we were able to find references, push the boundaries, get sort of examples on how to do this. Webflow is also really fast. We had 6 weeks, like I mentioned, so being able to move fast, to just test things, change things on the fly, it was custom, and it empowered us to bring our project to life really quickly. And I think, we've got a couple quotes from our team. The fact that Webflow supports things like Lottie, they have powerful JavaScript libraries like GSAP and Barba. Those were really big steps forward for us in terms of making a custom experience without the time to do a custom build. Webflow's improving their products, so they've got Rive. They've got a ton of stuff that's been announced here that we're really excited about. And this sort of unique experience platform was instrumental, and it transformed really complex ideas into a seamless experience. It also allowed us to say, Docusign has this vision, and we want to make sure that we're highlighting accessibility and innovation in what we're doing. So, as we sort of looked at the different elements of the site, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't prescribed. How can this be a museum-like experience? How can you walk from room to room, chapters of each of this? And so we really wanted to show all of the aspects. They're on screen here, but you can see there's typography, there's motion, there's sound, there's color, there's graphical elements, and of course, the new Docusign logo. And as we came through this 6 weeks, a few things we felt made this really successful. 3 ones that I think are good to just keep in mind as you're talking and working with your own agencies or with brands yourself. The first was that short timelines can actually be a blessing. You don't have time to make things perfect. Pressure builds diamonds. We found this was a really successful way for our teams to work together. And the second was work with people you trust, work with clients you trust, hopefully vice versa. We love working with Carla and her team. And it sort of created this mutual partnership where we became one rather than feeling like, oh, we need to have tensional moments, and how can we just do that with mutual respect. And third, we staffed really intentionally and really lean. You'd be amazed at how people rise to the occasion when everybody's working towards the same sort of North Star. And now I do want to show a bit more of the work off. We really wanted to convey that emotion of what it takes to create a rebrand and give a bit of a peek behind the curtain. Not just polished. A lot of work went into what Carla and her team did, and we wanted to make sure that we could show that journey. So as we took down the barriers, showed some of the behind-the-scenes processes of creating the incredible work, you got things that look like this. And, Docusign's tagline changed also throughout this process, bringing agreements to life. This became a natural thread and a guiding star for everything that we were doing. Copy, you'll see, was used really sparingly, and every line that we put into the site was thought about, how can this nod to our tagline? How can every little detail be considered as sort of that narrative around the theme of agreements? The overall experience, had small moments coming to life, not just the big ones, and we really wanted to make sure that that was key to manifest that brand narrative. The takeaway I would say here is, don't sweat the details. Nothing is too small. Those small moments are what allows people to feel like you have connection with your brand as well. We also had a great trust. I've touched on it. It was a huge testament to Carla and your team. The fact that they were willing to take risks was huge. So there was freedom and there was liberty to really push and pull and expand and go big for this. And as we went through, we tried to sort of leverage a lot of their existing assets. They had, as sort of you touched on, this asset library that had pictograms and illustrations and other visual references. And really, we were able to rebrand and show off the beauty of that through memorable and interactive experiences. The illustrations were provided to us as well by the Docusign team. They did, just such an incredible job. And using all of this newly constructed asset bank, it was a great moment to help bring it to life from the second you landed on the page. You can see some of these sort of ways that everything just felt really organic and also interactive. And then, the brand couldn't just speak to the user. We wanted to make sure that this was something where we had interactivity, because really, at the end of the day, we found that agreement needs dialogue in order to be successful. And designing it meant that we had to have engaging ways for visitors to explore the brand elements in motion. This was kind of a natural analogy to how we wanted to bring static sort of moments and documents to life in the same way that signatures come to life through Docusign. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It's from a review that we did. You never want to make your client cry, but when it's happy tears, you're okay with it. And so I think it just shows that there was such respect and collaboration between our
And
teams.
I am not a crier at all, but I remember the day that like they walked us through the prototype, and I was like, well, because it's one of those things where you put your heart and soul into it, and BASIC just did such a good job to like not only just like take a look at files we gave them, but like here are desires, here are wants and our needs, and like really like I felt listened to, which I think when you're leading a project of this is like it's such a big scope that you're like I need you to take this vision and like execute, and they just nailed it. So yeah, I never cry. I'm just on the record of that, but I totally cried.
It was the only time I think in my career I've ever wanted tears from one of my clients. So. And our team was so positive. We thought we'd show you some of the work. This is on both sides. The energy and the passion that came from both the BASIC DEPT side and the Docusign side. Everybody, as I mentioned, had this like similar goal. We just wanted to make this the best possible brand room and really feel like something that was going to disrupt the way that the brand came to life. Thankfully, it wasn't just internal accolades. We weren't just hyping each other up. We were also really proud to see that people in the design industry recognized the work as well. And I think I'll pause just for a second here. These are some of our initial stats for the site in terms of results, and they're pretty impressive. Since launch, we've had over 36,000 views to the site, and the average time on site is almost a minute and 20 seconds. That may not sound like a lot, but it is incredibly high for a site that people are going to. And since launch, we've also seen over an 1,100% lift in traffic year over year. Lastly, I think it's worth calling out, this has been such a fun project, but it's also nice when the work that you do, those months of hard work get recognized. So here are some of the awards. We also, as I mentioned, we're really excited about being a finalist in Webflow's Brand Transformation of the Year. So I think I'll round it out and sort of just say thank you to Carla, thank you to your team, and thank you to all of you for letting us share this story with you. We'd love to open it up to questions now.
Awesome. I think we have some microphones coming. There's a question right here.
Thank you. Wonderful work by both teams. I know this is a Webflow conference, but I'd really like to ask Carla, from the branding perspective, such a short time to implement such an amazing amount of work, how do you convince leadership that this direction is the right one? Internally, we've been trying to do a rebrand, and we have a founder, myself, who's just never happy with the visual identity that the team is providing. So how do you maybe walk the leadership through your decisions and convince everybody that this is the right path forward?
That's such a great question. So much to unpack in that statement as well. So I think at Docusign, we were really blessed to have buy-in early, even before we put pen to paper in any sense of visuals. We literally were just like looking at words on paper. And so we were playing around with what is going to be the brand promise. We didn't go into all of the details here today, but the brand promise and then something we call brand archetypes were a really powerful tool for us to bring leadership into the journey early. So we did that, like in week 2 of the project. So we were talking with our CEO directly, our head of legal, our head of HR, like, what do you want the future of Docusign to look like? And then our role was really to listen and then distill that into something that strategically we could present back to them and say, this is what we heard, we agree, or in some cases we don't agree, and this is what we're gonna take from that and use. So we built the brand promise and the brand archetypes first, before we even talked color or anything else. We then, I will say from a process standpoint, we went into like a cave for a minute, for like a week or 2 as a design team to just play with those visual elements, color, type, logo shapes. We tried probably 100 different paper sketches of different logos. And that was really helpful in bringing them again along the journey. And we put forward different visual concepts and again in front of our president of growth and our CEO. And I'll be very honest and frank, like we had like 5 to 6 final contenders, And I only liked 2. And so I was like really wrestling emotionally with like what happens if one of the ones that I don't like gets picked, like what do we do? Oh my God. But it was, and I will say for anyone who's in the room who's an agency person, like selling your ideas is a huge part of the job and was a huge part of my job, was like selling up into the business. So I would love to chat more about this. I could talk about it a long time, but the last thing I will say about aligning internal stakeholders to a goal is to be very clear and do not flex on dates. So we knew we wanted to launch on April 11th, so our work back from April 11th was Valentine's Day. And I said, if we're not nailed on Valentine's Day, it's not happening. And that was like D-Day for us, and we nailed it. But if we didn't, I don't know. I don't know what we would have done. But that was actually like something we conveyed early to them, and they were like, okay, great, we'll commit to that date. So that's really key too. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Alexander. Thank you for taking us through this journey. I've tried to do this a few different times, similar things. And our team has had some success using Webflow to build like a really great kind of like deep brand portal or brand center for like mostly our internal teams to use this. Jose and I just are getting ready to launch another one soon. And so like, getting buy-in for the rebrand, I think from an executive team is one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious how you got buy-in to like invest in a project like this like deep behind the scenes, like every possible layer of the brand and how you bring it to life. Like I know how much work this took, or I have an idea, and it's massive. Yeah. And so, getting your team, sorry, really long question, getting your team to like not just buy in that this is a good idea, but like we're willing to pay for this and like we see maybe a potential ROI here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that conversation.
So that's a great question. One thing I pride myself on, and so I've been at Docusign for 4 years, which is an interesting lens because I worked in the old brand for a long time and I had different passion points in the old brand. And then, even thinking of transitioning to a new brand itself, like as a legacy employee of 4 years, it was like, okay, that's interesting to like wrap your mind around. The good thing was, much like time management, budget management was really key at the beginning. So we had a pool of funds and we kind of carved out like, where do we want to invest? Where are we not going to invest? What are we going to do internal? What are we going to do external? Because we couldn't do everything, right? Like we created the concepts and we created things, but where we went external, and I really believe in working with agencies this way, BASIC as one. And then second, we didn't talk about today, but we actually built a sonic brand. So music and UX, UI, tones and things. And I was like, well, we can't clearly do that in-house. I'm not a musician. And so we put money into that. And then I knew, because you kind of only get one first impression. And we were changing so dramatically. We purposefully called this a rebrand and not a refresh, right? I think there's like levels. You can refresh a logo and change a color or change a thing. But we were like, no, this is a full indoctrination into like the new vision of the brand. So we did choose early on to like invest in core pieces, and that was going to be, for us, it was Sonic, it was the website, and then just frankly some production, like human hours. But otherwise, that was where we went really lean on resources, were to actually like do all the illustrations in-house, like redesign the website in-house, like, because we had those skill sets. So it was a pick and choose of what we wanted to really accomplish. In the back, I think there's...
Yeah, real quick. Sorry, I jumped in a little late. But how are you guys like measuring success kind of on the back end of this, right? There's all this front load work. It was pretty quick for a rebrand.
Yeah.
How are you kind of looking at that long term? Just curious.
Yeah, so measurement's a really good one. So we touched on just the site itself. So we've actually had a brand portal on Webflow for 4 years, going back to 2020. And that earlier brand portal was like kind of what you expect of like a typical like chapter by chapter, like here's type, here's colors, and it wasn't as cool as this one. It was great, it was really useful, but So in general, we saw a massive uptick just on the brand site itself. We did some social listening, and people were talking about the Docusign rebrand on X, Twitter, on Dribble, on like places I didn't expect exactly, LinkedIn for sure. We started getting a lot of inbound calls to like have us on podcasts or, different conferences. So that's all the like qualitative stuff, I think. It was like very like, just like, honestly, we weren't really expecting it because, Docusign is like, I don't know, it's SaaS. It's, it's not Nike. So yeah, we had a lot of interest. So that qualitatively, and that's still happening actually now, 6 months later. And then quantitatively and for customers and prospects, we launched all of this at a conference kind of like this. And we had, just an amazing amount of inbound traffic from that. And we saw a lot of analysts like Gartner and Forrester talk about it. We saw press coverage from Forbes and others. I think the jury is out for the next probably, honestly, like 3 to 5 years on if we will be successful in truly repositioning. Like if all of you walk away and think, oh, DocuSign is more than signature, I will have done the job. But we need like literally the whole world to know that. We, as a brand, we have over 1 billion signers. It's massive. We have 1.6 million customers. And so that is going to be the long haul. That's the long haul of like really teaching the world that there's so much more to your agreements than just the signature. So yeah, I hope I can follow up soon with like a great blog post about that or something. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Hey guys, this is really great work. Question, changing a brand is no small thing from like a business success perspective. There's a significant amount of market risk involved. How does just the market in general respond to it? It can have a pretty severe impact if it doesn't go well on your sales, on your marketing, on revenue generation. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, when you were developing this new brand strategy, how did you go about mitigating that risk, either through experimentation or market research?
Fantastic question. So for our core Docusign.com property, where you're going to try and buy and learn about our products, we did have an experimentation approach. We partnered with our internal website team. So launch day comes. We had a command center, started at 4 a.m, and we were literally turning on property by property by property. So we had, and also across the globe. So we not only had the US market that we're caring for, but EMEA and APJ and LATAM, and they all have different needs and desires from our brand. And so for some things, they were pretty like truly aesthetic only changes, like colored for color swaps. Other things were much bigger. So the biggest risk that we were looking at was actually the website navigation. We gave it a pretty significant overhaul in information architecture. And so it was, again, telling that story where e-signature was like dominant, and we kind of like moved it into a tertiary place, and we were telling the new platform story in the nav. And we watched that super closely. Like minute by minute. And we have amazing analysts and data folks inside DocuSign who really helped us with that. Ultimately, we actually never had to roll anything back, which honestly I was like maybe a little surprised by. But yes, to your point, like we were super sensitive to that. Now that it's been 6 months, again, we are focused on driving pipe to our new platform story. And that has been very successful on Docusign.com, where you'll see, again, that refresh nav, a huge new emphasis on copy that's very different, where before it was very transactional, like try e-signature, try e-signature. Now you're going to see like a richer narrative. And so far it's working very well. I do think different regions also, if you're a global brand, I would really recommend like looking at your regional needs rather than approaching it as everybody can get the same experience. I don't think that's true. I think you should tailor it to your regions for sure. And we did that as well. Great question. Thank you. In the back, maybe? Oh, yes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's really great work that you guys done here. I just have a question regarding the .com site. So, how did it manage to spill over to the main site, and what was the process like, and how long did that take to kind of update?
Oh, so man, okay, great question. So he's asking about Docusign.com, not brand.docusign.com, and those are separate sites. So Docusign.com is, it's actually uncontentful. I'm not allowed to say that. I don't know. I'm at Webflow. But we actually worked with BASIC on a couple. We had so much production work to do. I mean, literally every asset had to get rebranded.
Yeah.
Again, that lowercase s, right? Like that had to get changed everywhere. And so I shout out to my project manager, Jess. She built this amazing audit of the website. I mean, the most laundry list spreadsheet you'd ever want to see. It's like a CVS receipt, you know, it's like huge. And we really did like manage just based off of that. And so leading up to the launch day, we had about like 4 or 5 weeks to kind of flip everything over internally. And then I mentioned we're actually very remote/hybrid, and so we almost never do this. But for launch day, we brought everyone physically into one room, and it was like a kind of war room style. There was probably like between 30 or 40 people there. Everybody from design to copy to web production, who was like able to push new content live. And so they literally just worked through that spreadsheet piece by piece by piece, and it was very well orchestrated. Oh, the last thing I will add actually about the war room idea is we rehearsed launch day 2 times in advance. So like a couple weeks before launch, we literally held rehearsals. And so we didn't actually push anything obviously live in the rehearsal, but we practiced and we worked through like what ifs, or what if this goes wrong? How do we get the cache to flip fast? Like that kind of stuff. So project management, amazing. And then just literally physically bringing people together, I think helped us work through it faster than if we were all remote. It was a mix. Some pages his question was it a redesign or just assets? It was a mix depending on the business need of the page, the priority of the page. Like, so some pages like, actually the about page on our website about DocuSign was a full redesign. Our leadership page was a full redesign. Other pages that weren't incredibly important to the business but still need to exist, they were more of like a reskin. Like we'll update the colors, we'll update the assets. Yep. Great. Oh, yes.
All right. First of all, you guys did amazing work. I remember when this first launched, like my whole team was like gawking over the whole cool design process. And so it made me wonder, because we have an internal team of designers, and I want to know like how many designers did you have on this project, and then how did you also manage like the designer ego when something as ambitious as this, setting expectations for who handles what and making sure everybody's little piece shines in something as ambitious as this?
Yeah, wow, what a good question. So managing designer egos, how much time you got? No, I'm kidding. No, our team is a very tight-knit team culturally. I do think because I've been here for 4 years and many of our team has been here multiple years, we do have now a rich legacy of working together. So I think teamwork just is baked in to who we are and our value system. But to that question, I mentioned we did like a 1-week design sprint, and it was like, it doesn't matter what your specialty is. If you are a web designer, you're trying logo concepts. If you're a brand designer, you might be helping with the website, because it was really like we're aligned on this collective vision and destination. And that was my job, really, was to set that vision, to set that North Star, to guide the team, but not like I micromanage, and I know like founder mode is like a thing right now. I was founder mode. Like I was like, I am like literally every single day. And so every day, actually a really good thing that we did that I thought was good is we had what we called like ECD review every day, executive creative direction every day, which meant I was deciding yes or no on things every day. Like there was not a day that went by that we couldn't make a decision to hit our deadline. And I think if you just build into your team like mutual respect, we're all aligned to the vision, egos out the door, like you can fly. You can really do that. But I think building that team culture, is key to letting work like this shine. And then BASIC came in, and like Laura said, they had no egos. They weren't like, oh, we didn't make the brand, so we're not going to make the brand site for you. No, it was just like one team, unity, out the gate.
I think also just the way that you were doing these ECD reviews allowed our team to feel like they were one like larger group. And so, as I said, those lines, we weren't saying, oh, we're going to go off to the side and we're going to think about all these concepts and we're going to think about how it comes to life. We're going to design it and then we'll reveal it to you.
Yeah.
We would call or join reviews and be able to say, here's what we're thinking. Is this the right direction? If so, we're going to keep running with it for the rest of the day, and we'll show you where it's at, end of day, tomorrow, or we'll pick up the phone and have that 5-minute call.
Yeah. Being decisive is a really good thing, but it's really hard. Somebody mentioned earlier, like, what if you don't like the thing? And like, I still nitpick stuff here. Like, I love the work. I'm so proud of the work, but like, I think that's just the generative nature of being in the design space, is you're never going to be satisfied. Like, and that's actually good. Like, I think that's a good thing. But to be decisive on the flip side, to not let your hesitancy to hold you back from like just shipping, like really just shipping. So I could talk about this all day. You guys have such good questions. We are coming up on time, so
I think we have to,
I think we should
call
end
it. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.